will wipe your feet. Then they will take you by the hand to go inside. This is just for a dinner or lunch. Like that they will honor you even today. It's because the person who comes to your house is God. So anyway, Sudama takes him inside and she pours the water. Krishna washes his feet, wipes his feet, and Sudama is shrinking inside. He's feeling so bad. And then he brings him in, seats him on his throne and says, Sudama, tell me, how are you? What happened all these days? Why didn't you come? You know I was very busy. You could have come, no. Why didn't you come? Tell me all about your life. What have you been since that time we did in school? Hey, do you remember, we did this, we did that. And one incident he reminds him of. He says, do you remember one day we went to pick firewood in the forest? The Rishi Sandipani, our teacher's wife, told us to collect some twigs. Even in those days, they needed twigs for doing the sacrificial fire, havan. They will not chop trees. They have to go and pick the twigs that fall down, the dead twigs that fall from the tree. And for special havans, if you had, after picking you still needed more, you could take off those twigs that are dry and sticking out, still not fallen. And before snapping them, you have to say a mantra. Tell the tree, I'm sorry, I'm taking this from you. This much we cared for our trees and environment. That is the culture that was there in India. But where have we come now? New furniture every year. And paper. Pulling out tissues for everything. That's where we have become. We've come, and that's why we've punctured our ozone layer. So, he said, remember we both went to pick these twigs in the forest, and the Amma, the mother, the wife of the guru, had packed some curd rice. Krishna's favorite curd rice? Packed it with the pickle and all that she packed in a dabba and gave it to both of us. We went to the forest. We were playing and having fun, picking twigs and all. We went deeper and deeper into the forest. We forgot the time. It was twilight by the time we decided, oh my God, it's getting dark, let us go. Children are like that. They start playing, they have no sense of time. So we forgot the time, and then it was getting dark very quickly. We knew if we would try to cross the forest, we'll get caught in the dark, and animals are prowling. In those days we had lots of wild animals in the forest. Now they're all in cages. But before they really were there in the forest. So he said, we will quickly climb a tree each. And we'll stay there in the night. Morning we'll get up and we'll go. So both of them climbed 2 trees. And they say, let's keep talking through the night so that if we sleep, we don't fall off the bough. So they were talking, telling stories, jokes and all that. Then in the middle of it, both Sudama and Krishna, they say, hey, my stomach is growling, da. What to do? Even mine is growling, feeling very hungry. What shall we do? And Sudama had the packet, because he to collect some twigs. Even in those days, they needed twigs for doing the sacrificial fire, havan, they will not chop trees. They have to go and pick the twigs that fall down, the dead twigs that fall from the tree. And for special havans, if you had, after picking you still needed more, you could take off those twigs that are dry and sticking out, still not fallen. And before snapping them, you have to say a mantra. Tell the tree, I'm sorry, I'm taking this from you. This much we cared for our trees and environment. This is the culture that was there in India. And paper, pulling out tissues for everything. That's where we have become. We've come, and that's why we've punctured our ozone layer. So, he said, remember we both went to pick these twigs in the forest, and the Amma, the mother, the wife of the guru, had packed some curd rice. You know Krishna's favorite curd rice? Packed it with the pickle and all that. She packed in a dabba and gave it to both of us. We went to the forest. We were playing and having fun, picking twigs and all. We went deeper and deeper into the forest. We forgot the time. It was twilight by the time we decided, oh my God, it's getting dark, let us go. You know, children are like that. You know, they start playing, they have no sense of time. So we forgot the time, and then it was getting dark very quickly. We knew if we would try to cross the forest, we'll get caught in the dark, and animals are prowling. In those days we had lots of wild animals in the forest. Now they're all in cages. But before they really were there in the forest. So he said, we will quickly climb a tree each. And we'll stay there in the night. Morning we'll get up and we'll go. So both of them climbed 2 trees. And they say, let's keep talking through the night so that if we sleep, we don't fall off the bough. So they were talking, telling stories, jokes and all that. Then in the middle of it, both Sudama and Krishna, they say, hey, my stomach is growling, da. What to do? Even mine is growling. I'm feeling very hungry. What shall we do? And Sudama had the packet because he was carrying it. So Sudama says, what to do? I have the packet, what to do? If I throw it, if it falls down, somebody has to go to pick it. It's not safe. So Krishna says, never mind, you eat half of it. Tomorrow morning, as soon as I get down, I'll eat the remaining half. So Sudama starts eating. But you know, he was talking with Krishna and eating. He forgot, he went on eating, he finished the packet. Then when he finished, he said, oh my God, I finished the whole packet. So he says, Krishna, I'm so sorry. What happened? Talking, I finished the whole packet. What to do now? And Krishna says, okay, never mind what to do. Now that you have eaten, what can I do? Nothing can be done. I'm very hungry. Never mind. When I go home, Amma will give me something. So they got down and they came home, and the wife again made more food for them. Now, Sudama, when this story was told to him again, recounted, Sudama understood in a flash that he was suffering in poverty because he had eaten all the food that day, did not give anything to the Lord. So, after recounting this story, Krishna says, by the way, did my sister-in-law, he thinks of him as his brother, no? So, did my sister-in-law send anything for me? I'm sure she must have sent. Where is it? Give it. And immediately Sudama pushes this behind. He's ashamed to take this mouth of rice and give it. So Krishna, there you are, you're hiding. He pulls his hand out and takes the knot. And then he says, okay, what is it? And he opens and he finds the poha. And immediately he takes one hand, one mouthful, and he pops it into his mouth. Hey Rukmini, find out where she buys this. You have to buy the same chilva. So tasty. And Rukmini, okay. She's used to all his drama, no? So then, and he goes for the second mouthful. He takes the other, some more. When Rukmini comes and very gently stops him and says, we would also like to taste it. Her purpose was not to taste that, as if Lakshmi has to taste that only. She has everything in her house. But her purpose was to prevent Krishna from eating further. Because when he ate one mouthful, Sudama's house the hut had turned into a palace. And his wife and children the children were playing with golden toys. Not all your mechanical plastic and tin. They were playing with real golden toys. Rukmini knows that if he took the second mouth, she and the other Lakshmis have to go and live with Sudama. Got it? Krishna, if the Lord took one grain of what you are offering, do you know what we will get? You have no clue. So always offer the food to God first and then eat. Because you don't know which day he will take just that little mouthful of something. That's why we always say Atiti Devo Bhava. If you have somebody who can feed, it may be God who's coming through him to eat. So that's why we never say no to people who may come to your house unannounced. And you have to give them your food and not eat. So, Rukmini stops him from eating because she cannot leave him and go away to Sudama's house. And Krishna then of course understands Rukmini's problem and he allows her to take the rest, and then he presses his friend's feet and then Rukmini is fanning Sudama, and after he sleeps, Rukmini goes away, Krishna stays there, and then the next day Sudama says, I have to go home now. Oh no, you just now came, you can't go now, how unfair. It is Rukmini, tell him no, look, you have to tell him to say, no, I have to go, please Krishna, please understand, I have to go, children will be looking for me, I have to go, and he leaves. And Krishna doesn't give him anything in his hand. Sudama goes home to his village, 7th street, okay, number 39. 38 is there, but 39 there is no hut, there is a huge palace. So he thought he made the street must be wrong. So he goes back. 7th street, same street only. You can see 37, 38, but 39 his house is missing. So he goes to number 38 and says, excuse me ma'am, sorry, but there was a hut here, what happened to it? And so she says, oh, you didn't know. Go see, that is your house only, go and see it. What, my house? Yes, it's your house. We also were shocked. One morning we got up, there was a palace here. And your wife, you must go and see. I'm not going to tell, go and see for yourself. So he goes there, and there in the entrance he stands timidly when he sees this very fat, prosperous looking woman with heavy jewelry and silk and all that, and coming, oh, come, please come in. And he's looking at her, he says, I'm your wife, come inside. Then he sees his children are all happily playing with golden toys, and he's shocked. Then he realizes what had happened. Krishna had transferred most of his wealth to Sudama in his absence. One day, Devaki has a desire. She calls Krishna and says, and Balaraman, she says, before you were born, 6 of my children were killed by Kamsa. So I want to see them once, just once. So can you bring them from Patala? So Krishna and Balarama go down, they bring the 6 children. They even have names. The names are also listed in the Bhagavatam. And he brings them to Devaki. Devaki hugs them to her breast and kisses them, blesses them, and she sends them back. Because they are Vasus. Their period is over. So she sends them back, but she just felt that at least once she should hug them, because she never had them with her after their birth. Now, this story of Bhrigu Muni, a great sage, all the rishis had got together for a conference because there was some trouble that was happening, and they were going to do a huge havan, a sacrifice, and they needed to decide on one deity to whom they could offer all the oblations which they were going to give in the fire. So they had shortlisted 3 deities. And who were they? Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So Bhrigu Muni, the chief one of the group, said, I will go and do the final interview. 3 people selected. I will personally go and give the interview to select the final person who can come. Imagine, those days rishis should go and interview gods. So he went first to Brahma. And Brahma Loka, he goes and he enters, he sees Brahma with his eyes closed, enjoying his wife playing the veena. Saraswati is playing the veena. Rag Kalyani, she's playing. And Brahma is enjoying. He better enjoy. Wow. And so the rishi walks in, he finds that Brahma doesn't pay attention to him. He gets angry and walks away. Okay, disqualified. No interview. Without interview, disqualified. Do you have some term for that?
Automatic reject.
Automatic reject. There must be some term. So, number 2, second candidate, Shiva. This one was worse. He was dancing with his wife. Thandav. Ananda Thandav. With the damaru and all. Dama. Nandi Mattalam Kotta Naradarya Tuka Tom Tom Yendre Tom Tom Yendrayan Talam Shruti Yodu Kutta. This whole thing is described. How Shiva Parvati dance and who all. Nandi Mattalam Kotta. Naradar Yard meter. Naradar is playing on his tanpura, on his yard, on the harp. Nandi, the bull that is his vahanam, Shiva's vahanam, is playing the vridangam. Nandi. So all this is described. And he is dancing away. So the rishi now is double angry. Evicted. What did you say? Automatic rejection. Disqualified. He walks off. Now the only candidate left is, the last resort is Vishnu. Narayana. Narayana, what? He, you know how he is. Sridevi, Bhudevi, happily. Bhrigu is now twice angry, no? He goes in, his blood pressure is shot up like anything. He goes in straight and he notices again he has not even opened his eyes. Narayana has not opened his eyes. He goes and gives. Him. Sudama goes home to his village. 7th Street. Okay. Number 39. 38 is there, but 39 there is no hut. There is a huge palace. So he thought he made the street must be wrong. So he goes back. 7th Street, same street only. You can see 37, 38, but 39 his house is missing. So he goes to number 38 and says, "Excuse me ma'am, sorry, but there was a hut here. What happened to it?" And so she says, "Oh, you didn't know. Go see, that is your house only. Go and see it." "What, my house?" Yes, it's your house. We also were shocked. One morning we got up, there was a palace here. And your wife, you must go and see. I'm not going to tell, go and see for yourself. So he goes there, and there in the entrance he stands timidly when he sees this very fat, prosperous looking woman with heavy jewelry and silk and all that, and coming in. "Oh, come, please come in." And he's looking at her. He says, "I'm your wife. Come inside." Then he sees his children are all happily playing with golden toys, and he's shocked. Then he realizes what had happened. Krishna had transferred most of his wealth to Sudama in his absence. One day, Devaki has a desire. She calls Krishna and says, and Balaraman, she says, "You know, before you were born, 6 of my children were killed by Kamsa. So I want to see them once, just once. So can you bring them from Patala?" So Krishna and Balarama go down. They bring the 6 children. They even have names. The names are also listed in the Bhagavatham. And he brings them to Devaki. Devaki hugs them to her breast and kisses them, blesses them, and she sends them back. Because they're Vasus. Their period is over. So she sends them back, but she just felt that at least once she should hug them, because she never had them with her after their birth. Now, this story of Bhrigu Muni, a great sage, all the rishis had got together for a conference because there was some trouble that there was happening, and they were going to do a huge havan, a sacrifice, and they needed to decide on one deity to whom they could offer all the oblations which they were going to give in the fire. So they had shortlisted 3 deities. And who were they? Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So Bhrigu Muni, the chief one of the group, said, I will go and do the final interview. 3 people selected. I will personally go and give the interview to select the final person who can come. Imagine, those days rishis should go and interview gods. So he went first to Brahma. And Brahma Loka, he goes and he enters, he sees Brahma with his eyes closed, enjoying his wife playing the veena. Saraswati is playing the veena. Rag Kalyani, she's playing. And Brahma is enjoying. He better enjoy. Wow. And so the rishi walks in, he finds that Brahma doesn't pay attention to him. He gets angry and walks away. Okay, disqualified. No interview. Without interview, disqualified. Do you have some term for that?
Automatic reject.
Automatic reject. There must be some term. So, number 2, second candidate, Shiva. This one was worse. He was dancing with his wife. Thandav. Ananda Thandav. With the damaru and all. Dama. Huh? Nandi Mattalam Kotta Naradaryal Tuka Tom Tom Yendre Tom Tom Yendrayan Talam Shrutiyodu Kutta. This whole thing is described. How Shiva, Parvati dance and who all. Nandi Mattalam Kotta. Naradar Yard meter. Naradar is playing on his tanpura, on his yard, on the harp. Nandi, the bull that is his vahanam, Shiva's vahanam, is playing the mridangam. Nandi. So all this is described. And he is dancing away. So the rishi now is double angry. Evicted. What did you say? Automatic rejection. Disqualified. He walks off. Now the only candidate left is, the last resort is Vishnu. Narayana. Narayana, what? He, you know who he is. Sridevi, Bhudevi, happily. Bhrigu is now twice angry, no? He goes in, his blood pressure is shot up like anything. He goes in straight and he notices again he has not even opened his eyes. Narayana has not opened his eye. He goes and gives him one kick on his chest. Sridevi, Bhudevi are very angry now. Reflected ego, upset. Husband has been insulted. They get up, angry. And Vishnu gets up also, Narayana. Oh my God. And then he gets to the rishi, bows down, takes his foot and says, I hope you haven't hurt your feet. Bhrigu Muni says, selected. Come tomorrow for the house. Selected. Appointed. Even today, he bears that mark. It's called the Srivatsa mark. It's a dent in his chest. You and I would have chopped off his head for kicking you, isn't it? But what does the Lord do? He is worried about his foot getting hurt. That much vinayata, that much compassion and love for all the beings. Even when you kick him, he will only care for you. He won't worry that you have insulted him. Got it? So that is the Srivatsa. There is another thing that Krishna does before the end is approaching. He conducts a huge love mela. Mela is a fair. You know, you have what fair? Cow fair, buffalo what? Cattle fair. You have what?
State fair.
Okay. That kind of things they had he organizes a love mela. He sends invitations to Vrindavan, to all the gopas, gopis, his foster parents, everybody, Radha, everybody, they all come. He has a huge acre of land where he puts up tents in different areas. And then he invites from Mathura, Ugrasena, Devaki, Vasudeva, Rohini, Balaram, everybody, they all come. And his own wives, 60,108, they all come. So he has these huge tents. So in one tent, all the wives have come together. Pandavas also, with their wives. They have also come. Draupadi, everybody has come. So one tent, all the wives, they are comparing notes. What does your husband do when you get sick? What does your husband do? You know, comparing notes. Analyzing husbands. Okay. And then their husbands are all in one tent. And they are discussing the wives and their political matters, etc. Then the parents, the mothers all in one. Kunti, Devaki, Yashoda, they all are together. And Yashoda, Devaki Gopi, his foster parents, everybody. Radha, everybody. They all come. He has a huge acre of land where he puts up tents in different areas. And then he invites from Mathura, Ugrasena, Devaki, Vasudeva, Rohini, Balaram, everybody, they all come. And his own wives, 60,108, they all come. So he has these huge tents. So in one tent, all the wives have come together. Pandavas also, with their wives. They have also come. Draupadi, everybody has come. So one tent, all the wives, they are comparing notes. What does your husband do when you get sick? What does your husband do? Comparing notes. Analyzing husbands. Okay. And then their husbands are all in one tent. And they are discussing the wives and their political matters, etc. Then the parents, the mothers all in one. Kunti, Devaki, Yashoda, they all are together. And Yashoda, Devaki says, oh, you're so blessed, you brought up my Krishna, thank you so much. And Yashoda is like, after all, now he's living with you, so you should be more blessed than me. And she has tears in her eyes, he's so jealous of Devaki. Like this, they're all talking. Then the fathers are all in one tent. The gopis are not in any tent, they are standing in the distance. They are feeling shy. They are feeling, wonder whether Krishna will notice them. He is now a king. From the distance they are watching him. He is going from tent to tent talking to those people. Making that, finding whether they are comfortable with everything is okay. And when he enters, he finds they are so busy talking amongst themselves, they are not paying attention to him. So he makes sure they have enough to eat, to drink and all that. And then he goes from tent to tent. And he has corner of the eye, he has noticed the gopis. This whole meeting was done only for them. So after he has made them comfortable, he goes towards them. They are standing in the distance, the edge of the forest. So he goes towards them. And as soon as he goes, they are a little shy to talk to him. Because, see, in their minds they've put the distance. That he has become king now. He's not just a cowherd anymore. He's not one of us. He is one of them. The distance had come. So they are very shy, they are reserved, and they are looking how they now would afraid to. Earlier they would tease him. Isn't it? They would crack jokes on him. They would scold him. They would do all that. But now, a king, how can we do all that? So they are standing and waiting. And Krishna goes amongst them, hugs them, each one of them. And then he starts joking and, making them feel comfortable. And soon they are back to their own. And then they tell, we thought you had changed. You had not at all come to see us. You promised to come and see, so I brought you here. And I was busy with all these things. Jarasandha, Shishupala, Satyajit, and how many and all these wives, and Narakasura, and Banasura. So all this, I was so busy. What can I do, my dear ones? But my heart is always with you. And he had a way of getting them round his finger in 2 minutes. So they all believed. And it was only for them, just hearing his voice, just feeling his presence, just having him with them was enough. Even if he told them a string of lies, they were willing to take it. Oru poyyavad sol kanne. Even if it is a lie, tell me that you love me. That is unconditional love. That was the love the gopis had for him. And this he knew was the last meeting in his physical body, because soon after this, his death is going to happen. We are going to see it tomorrow, but the preliminary, what happens before that, we have to learn, and then we will end with Avaduta Gita today. Tomorrow we will see the end, physical end of Krishna. And then a lot of stuff on bhakti. Throughout Bhagavatam, you would have seen preliminary what happens before that we have to learn, and then we will end with Avaduta Gita today. Tomorrow we will see the end, the physical end of Krishna, and then a lot of stuff on bhakti. Throughout Bhagavatam, you would have seen.
I think for some reason the CD is not going beyond this. So I will Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. So this completes, actually it doesn't complete, but this is what I have of Raji Ma's Bhagavatam. For some reason that 7th CD did not really, I couldn't play that. What we saw today was actually the last part of day 6. So for day 7, in order for us to complete the Sapthaah Bhagavatam, I have an option is that to read from the book that Rajima herself had recommended. So the last part, what she mentioned was the Avaduta Gita, then the end of Krishna, how he left his physical body, as well as the bhakti that she was talking about, that we will read from the PDF. So just bear with me. I'll share the screen and then we'll read from that. Meanwhile, all of us can mentally chant or chant aloud Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai Gurudev. So I will read this, whatever I remember of what was there on day 7. I don't have the CDs with me to replay that, and I don't have the recording either. So we will have to make do by completing day 7 by reading from the book. This book is Srimad Bhagavatam by Kamala Subramaniam. I will share the PDF with all of you. I'll put it in the group so you can all read Bhagavatam for yourselves. Like Rajima said, she has picked and chosen some stories in order to complete this within 7 days. So we'll go ahead and read this part. The curse of the Rishis. The Asuras who had been born on the earth were being destroyed one by one. Several of them had been killed by Krishna when he was in Vrindavan, and some by Balarama. The others were just waiting to be killed. Something else had to be arranged before that. When Narayana took the form of Krishna at the request of Mother Earth and Brahma, he had asked the Devas to be born as his kinsmen in the house of the Yadavas. Before his time came, Krishna had to see that the entire clan was annihilated. Since they were Devas, and since they had the special good fortune of being constantly in the company of Krishna, they could not be killed by anyone else. Krishna thought, even after the war, which is to take place, the burden of the earth will still be heavy because of the immense group of the Yadavas, Andhakas, Bhojas, Vrishnis, and Dasharhas. They are invincible. And as Kali Yuga, the 4th quarter of time, draws near, they will lose their righteousness, and again the earth will suffer. Even as a bamboo grove is burnt by the fire produced by itself, even so, I should be the one to destroy them. I will keep that as my last duty before I go back. He decided that a Brahmin's curse would be the best way for his purpose to be achieved. Krishna was time in the human form, and at his behest, several rishis thought of visiting a holy spot by name Pindaraka. The rishis were Vishwamitra, Asita, Kanva, Durvasa, Bhrigu, Angirasa, Kashyapa, Vamadeva, Atri, Vasishta, and Narada. On their way to Pindaraka Kshetra, the rishis thought they would go to Dwaraka, visit Krishna and Balarama, and then proceed to their destination. They were received with great excitement by Krishna and the other elders. They were asked to stay for a while with them, and the rishis agreed. The palace gardens were kept apart for their use. The youngsters of the house were full of pranks, and they wanted to tease the rishis. They dressed up Samba as a woman, Samba, the son of Krishna and Jambavati. They went to the presence of the rishis. Falling at their feet with humility, they asked them, "Please do us a favor. This woman with the dark eyes is with child, and she is eager to know if she will give birth to a son or a daughter. Woman that she is feeling too shy to approach you herself, and so she has asked us to question you." The rishis looked at the youngsters and then at Samba. They became very angry, and they said, "A pestle will be born, and this pestle will be the cause of the destruction of your entire clan." The youngsters were scared out of their wits, and they did not know what to do. They rushed out of the gardens, and when they took off the disguise of Samba, they found an iron pestle in his garments. Something had to be done about it, and with worried looks and halting steps, they entered the council hall where the elders had assembled. They placed the pestle at the foot of the throne and stood silent. Krishna saw their scared looks and spoke to them softly and asked them what had been happening, which could dampen their spirits so much. Something serious should have happened, or else they would not have come into the assembly hall. Encouraged by his tone, they told them all that had happened. Balarama was furious with them. The old king Ugrasena and Rama ordered the iron pestle to be ground into fine powder and thrown into the sea. Thus they thought they could avert the fate predicted by the rishis. The pestle was powdered and thrown into the sea. Only one sharp piece was left behind, and it could not be broken up. This was also thrown into the sea, and all the Yadavas breathed freely after this was done, and they could even find it in their hearts to forgive the youngsters for their prank. It was only a natural thing for children to do. The Great War. I'm going to skip some of these. These are what I remember Rajima had skipped. So the Great War happens, the Kurukshetra War, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And then Balarama's Tirtha Yatra, he goes on to all of this. I think each of us, when we individually read, we can read all the individual stories. Krishna and Uddhava. Uddhava was one of the Yadavas who was always with Krishna and who was very near to him. He saw the evil omens and he heard the words of Krishna. He waited for the time to see Krishna alone. He wanted him all for himself. When he did find him alone, he went to Krishna and falling at his feet, held on to them firmly and said, Krishna, Yogesha, you are the Lord of the Lords and you have made a decision. You are going to destroy this Yadava clan and then you will go away. I guessed it when you did not avert the curse of the Brahmins, even though you could have, if you had wished to. You are the Lord Narayana and could not have saved us all. And could you not have saved us all if you had wanted to? You have a purpose in coming to this decision. I am not here to ask you why all this is happening. I have come to ask you a boon of you, a favor. What do you want to ask of me? Asked Krishna with his hand in that of his friend. Uddhava was very dear to Krishna. You, Krishna, said Uddhava, I want you and your nearness. All these years I have always been with you, and not a moment has passed when I did not see you or talk to you. If you leave me, what will happen to me? I cannot remain here for even half a moment when your holy feet have become lost to me. I have ever been with you and I cannot be alone after you are gone. Please take me with you and bless me. Uddhava was sobbing his heart out and Krishna looked at him with his eyes full of love. He could never bear to see his bhaktas suffer. The Lord's love for his bhaktas was far greater than the love he had even for Lakshmi, his wife. With infinite tenderness, Krishna took the hands of Uddhava in his hands and said, You have spoken nothing but the truth when you said that my purpose is to lead the Yadava house to its destruction. They will all die by their own hands. Brahma, Mahadeva, and the Devas came to me and asked me to go back to my abode. Once, years ago, at the request of Brahma, I promised to take a human form along with Adishesha, and the reason for this birth was to establish dharma on the earth. I have achieved it, and I have nothing else to achieve now. There is just a week more left for me to finish the last of my tasks, the annihilation of the house of the Yadavas, and as for Dwaraka, the sea will break her bounds and enter the city when I am gone. My dear Uddhava, the moment I leave this earth, her glory will diminish and Kali Yuga, which is waiting to be born, will occupy her completely. Do not live in the world abandoned by me. Men during the Kali Yuga will take great delight in committing sin. You will have to spend the rest of your time the rest of the lifetime assigned to you in this world with your mind completely detached from your kinsmen and from everyone who have been all these days near to you and very dear to you. Let your mind be set on me and only on me. With an even temperament, move in this world of men waiting for the end. Let me tell you something, Uddhava. I will describe what Maya is. You will then know how to avoid getting entangled in its web. When the senses are in action, they perceive the world outside. There are sights which the eyes see, sounds which the ears hear, tastes which the tongue relishes, and so on. These experiences are called manomaya, meaning they are born of the mind, and so they are considered transient. This is Maya. To a mind which runs in pursuit of these which feed the senses, there occurs a kind of delusion, and out of this delusion is born what is called guna dosha. Guna dosha is a condition when the Atman becomes tainted with the gunas. This involves him further into the sea called samsara, and it is not easy for him to extricate himself from this morass. You should therefore control your senses and control your mind too, and stop these from straying into dangerous ground. Since you have been with me so long, you will not stray from the constant contemplation on the Brahman. Uddhava shook his head sadly and said, No, Krishna, it will not be easy. To withdraw the mind from the objects of the senses is not possible. When I say it, I, who has ever been devoted to you, what then of those who have no bhakti for you? This lesson you are teaching about keeping the senses under control is so hard to learn and harder to practice. Caught as I am in the snare made up of I and mine, I need your guidance to shake off this mire from my feet and reach firm ground. Tell me how. Krishna said, most of those who have tasted the worldly pleasures and have finally arrived at the truth have been mostly those who have done it by themselves. They have tried again and again and have finally succeeded in bringing their senses under control. First the senses and then the mind. The stigma of the vasanas has to be erased by one's own efforts. It is one's own mind which should be used to achieve this detachment. Man is given the power of discrimination, and with the help of this, he should arrive at the truth. Two things confront a man who is in search of truth. They are pratyaksha and anumana. Pratyaksha is what he can perceive with his senses, and anumana is what he conceives with his mind. The fearless ones who are not afraid to follow their quest, their search to the end, those who are proficient in the two schools of thought, Sankhya and Yoga, even they look only for me. The human mind comes to the conclusion that I am something apart from the things which can be perceived. When the mind is illuminated, when the senses are roused, when the eye sees or the skin feels, it is not on its own accord, but it is because of something else, some other power which has got to be present. This is the anumana at which the mind arrives, and because of pratyaksha, which is the reality around us, and anumana, which is the speculation which is based on reality, but goes further, deeper into the real nature of the pratyaksha. With these two, the wise arrive at the truth, which is myself. I will explain this further with the help of a story. And thus begins the Avaduta Gita. This is what Raji Ma said she will end the day 7 with. Once, Avaduta Gita, this is part 1. Once there was a conversation between Yadu, my ancestor, and Dattatreya, who was an Avaduta. Yadu was once wandering on the face of the earth, and he came across a young man who was naked and was walking without fear. Yadu recognized him as an Avaduta. He accosted him and said, "You appear to me to be a happy man. Your face has a tranquility which can be seen only in one who has found inner peace. Men in this world run after transient things like wealth and the pleasing of the senses. In their midst, you seem to stand apart. When a forest is caught in a conflagration, if an elephant is able to escape from it and soaks itself in the waters of the Ganga, the satisfaction it will have is seen in your face, since you seem to have escaped from the fire of desire and the pursuit of the things of the earth, which is the lot of the common man. The joy you seem to have inside you is reflected in your calm face, and if you will be willing enough, will you tell me how you arrived at this state?" Dattatreya said, "O king, this was culled by me from various sources. I have finally reached the end of my quest, and in my wanderings in search of peace and in search of truth, my teachers have been many. I will tell you who they are, who taught me how to live without being affected by the desires." So he actually has 24 teachers. My teachers are the earth, the wind, the sky, water, fire, the moon, the sun, a pigeon, a python, the ocean, a moth, the honey bee, the keeper of a beehive, an elephant, a deer, and a fish, a woman by the name Pingala, a small animal like the squirrel, which is called Kurari, a child, a young girl, an archer, a snake, a spider, and a wasp which builds its own shell. These 24 were my teachers, whom my mind chose as my gurus. From their behavior, I selected for myself the lessons which were essential for the advancement of my search after truth. I will elaborate on this and tell you what lesson each one of these was able to teach me. Even if he is oppressed by the things of the world, the firm man never moves away from the right path. This I learned from the earth. The power of enduring anything is what the earth has taught me. A wise man will ever be interested in doing good to others, and he is convinced that he is born on this earth as a human being just for that purpose. That is the lesson I learned from the mountain. To stand firm and to be unmoved is the lesson these two taught me. Man should learn to live with the barest minimum which is needed for him to live. He should not indulge. The really wise man, though he is placed in the midst of the objects of the senses, should learn to live without getting attached to any of them. The wind taught me this lesson. The man who has realized the truth about himself will know that the Atman which is inhabiting his body, this body made up of the 5 elements, has to pass through the different stages of childhood, youth, and old age. But the one who is wise will know that he need not suffer the delusion that it is all real, and he can easily pass through this world without getting involved in it, like the wind which blows through different places but is never attached to any spot. One of the most important truths about the Atman I learned from the sky. When the wind blows, a number of clouds are found all across the sky, and it seems to us that the sky is covered by these clouds, but in reality, they have not covered the sky. There is no contact between them and the sky, though the sky seems to be completely covered by the clouds. Even so, the Brahman, the 5 elements, have been used to form this entire universe, and the Atman is encased in this body made up of these 5 elements and the abstract gunas. But in reality, the Atman inside you is not involved with the body which is holding it, and the Brahman is apart from the visible world which is born out of it, its manifestation. The waters of a river are ever pure, full of love for mankind, sweet in nature, and apt to purify those who come to it. The good men of the world are like the river which cleanses all. They do so by their sight, their touch, and their words. Fire, which is full of its own light, consumes everything, but is not contaminated by what it eats. Its heat is enough to purify what it consumes. Even so, the man who has tapas as his wealth will glow like fire, will be untainted, even if he enjoys the things of the world that the world has to offer. He will not be sullied by them because he will purify them. He never discriminates between what is good and what is bad when he is given something to eat. But he is so full of tapas that nothing which touches him will taint him. Even as fire is concealed in wood, the wood which it consumes, the Atman is concealed in the human body and is not visible to ordinary beings. The moon taught me a lesson, a great lesson it was I learned. When we follow the waxing and the waning of the moon, we see that from the new moon stage, when there is nothing visible in the sky, to the third day, when a thin sliver is seen, there is a change in the appearance of the moon. From then on, it is evident that the moon grows bigger and bigger, and finally on the Purnima day, the day of the full moon, it shines in all its glory. From the next day, however, the glory becomes less and less, until finally we do not see the moon at all. If we consider this phenomenon properly, we see that they are just the phases of the moon. The kalas, as they are called, undergo a change, and these lead us to the supposition that the moon grows, stops growing, and gets smaller and smaller, and finally is no more. Even so, the stages called birth, growth, and decay, which the body goes through, do not affect the Atman. Man seems to be born, seems to grow up into youth, manhood, old age, and then seems to decay and finally die. But all these stages are not applicable to the Atman, which is eternal, indestructible. Birth dies into child, and that into youth, and later into old age, and finally death. But these changes are for the body, and the unchanged Atman remains unchanged even after this cycle of changes, even as the moon goes through its phases, waxes and then wanes and waxes again. When the flames rise from the fire in a continuous flow, no one knows how it begins and how it ends. The particles in the fire which burn and produce the flame are kindled, burn for a while and then die. But the flame is so steady and continuous that no one is able to trace the birth and death of an individual particle. Several drops after that, after all, make up the river. The flow of the river is continuous, and time, which drives everything to its finality, does not reveal to us the course of the individual drop of water. The river flows, and that is all that is perceptible. Even so, in its endless journey through time, the Atman assumes several bodies, which each in itself is born and dies. But as a whole, the Atman continues its journey without any interruptions. The sun absorbs the waters with the help of his rays and, when the time comes, gives it to one who desires it and wants it. He is never interested in the water except with the desire to do good to others. Even so, the really wise man is never attached to the things which gratify the senses, but he takes them so that he may give them to others and see them benefit by what he has collected, like wealth, like grains, and such like. This is the lesson I learned from the sun. Another lesson was taught by him. When the sun is reflected in different shaped vessels or in puddles on the ground, or in the dents made by the hoofs of cows while they walk, the sun we see in these different reflecting surfaces is just a reflection of the sun and not the sun itself. Again, the reflection in each case is different, but it is the same sun who is reflected. Even so, the Atman, which is enclosed in different bodies, seems to be different in each person, but in reality, It is the same Atman in all of them. From a pigeon, I learned the lesson that too much attachment to anything or any person will only cause pain and unhappiness. There was a male pigeon and its mate, and together they had built a nest on top of a tree. They were absolutely devoted to each other. They did everything together, whether it was flying or perching on a twig, lying down in their nest, eating or hunting for food. If at any time the female bird wanted anything, the male pigeon would try his utmost to get what she wanted, and so they lived happily in their nest. In course of time, the female laid eggs in the nest. The eggs hatched and young pigeons emerged out of them. They were soft and so tender. The parent birds spent all their time in tending them, and they derived a lot of happiness out of the fact that they had these young ones all for themselves. The young ones were learning to play, and gradually they sprouted wings. They delighted their parents with their attempts at learning to fly. Once, the parents had gone out to collect food for their young. When they were absent, the young ones were found by the hunter. They were playing near their nest. He found it easy to capture them, and he placed them in his net. After collecting food for their young, the parent birds came home. As soon as they came, they found that the young ones had been caught in the hunter's net. The mother bird was distraught with grief, so much so that she, wishing to be with the young ones, rushed into the net and was also entrapped. The male pigeon saw what had happened, and he began to lament loudly about the misfortune that had befallen him. He said, "My dear wife, who meant everything to me, is now going to leave me, and with her will go my children. I lived only for the sake of these. What is the use of my being alive without them?" And so, unable to bear the sight of his dear ones trying in vain to get out of the net, the father bird also rushed into the net and was trapped. The hunter came along and, taking all of them, went home happily. Like this pigeon, one who is ever spending his thoughts only on his possessions, on his homes, and who is bent on acquiring wealth and other worldly things to please his dear ones, will, like a pigeon, be destroyed with all those who depend on him. This birth as a human being is the gateway to the path which leads to salvation. If man does not realize this and gets involved with worldly desires, he will be like one who, having begun to climb up, falls down, and the fall is greater since the height to which he has been raised was great. Avadhuta Gita 2. A really detached person will not go in search of the pleasures of the senses. He should be indifferent to everything, like the python which eats what comes its way, whether it is tasty or not, whether it is small or big. The python never goes out of its way to get food for itself, nor does it make any special attempt to satisfy its hunger. This was the lesson I learned from the python. Even so, man should be satisfied with what he gets, and he should never go in pursuit of worldly things. The python does not grieve if it does not get food daily, but waits with patience, even starving for days together, without thinking that it is a misfortune. Man should also have the fortitude to put up with the fact that he will be denied many of the so-called good things in life. The really wise man should learn to control his desires, the senses, to such an extent that he should forget they even exist. Though his senses are alert, though his mind is active, though his body has strength, still man should so school these that he should be sleeping as far as they are concerned. Not only sleeping, but inert. He should have but one desire, moksha, and this should be his aim. A wise man should appear like the ocean. His surface should be clear and lucid, but he should be so deep that no one can gauge the depth. Meaning, a man should appear as though he's very simple. Since he does not behave as the others do, the sensible men of the world, he will appear simple to the common man. But his thoughts should be so deep that no one can guess what they are. No one should be able to cross him in his purpose, since he will be a spiritual giant. Nothing should be able to upset him or cause any kind of disturbance in his mind, in his mental makeup, meaning the senses and the objects of the senses should be powerless to upset him or cause any kind of disturbance in his mind. When the rainy season fills the mountain torrents with water, they rush down in tumult, but they do not cause any tumult in the sea when they empty themselves into it. And when in summertime the waters flowing into the sea are scanty, the sea does not decrease in level. Even so, when in the grip of the passions, man should not let it affect him, nor should he be depressed when his desires are frustrated. Woman who has been created is the personification of the Maya of the Lord, and as such, she is indeed tempting. If a man loses his power of reasoning and thinking and falls a victim to her charms, he is destroyed even as the moth that flirts with a flame. This is the lesson which a moth taught me. The 5 indriyas, the sense organs, are for seeing, smelling, touching, hearing, and tasting. The moth is destroyed as a result of the sense of sight which beguiles it. So does man, since his eyes betray him into foolishness. When one eats, one should eat only the amount which is necessary to keep body and soul together. And man should eat slowly, very slowly, and not swallow it all in one single mouthful. The honey bee collects honey from the flowers. He does not, however, beggar them of all the honey they have, nor does he become avaricious. He takes only what he needs, and in the bargain, he is careful not to hurt the flower from which he takes the honey. Even so, a real sannyasi should accept from the grahastha, the family man, just so much and not more. And he should not embarrass the host. Even as a honey bee collects honey from all flowers, small or big, even so, man should cull knowledge from the big and the small. All the Shastras must be studied, and he should take from them what he thinks is the essence of them. If a man tries to save up for tomorrow, he will come to ruin. When he gets food, the sannyasi should not keep some of it by saying, I will eat this tonight, or it will serve me for tomorrow. This is wrong. His hands should form the begging bowl, and his stomach should be the vessel wherein the food is stored. If he does not do this, he will come to grief like the honey bee. If man collects wealth and does not give it to others, nor enjoys it himself, he is like the honey bee. If man collects wealth and does not give it to others, nor enjoys it himself, he is like the honey bee. The man is foolish, since his wealth will be taken by one who is stronger than him. The wise man knows how to make others work for him, like the keeper of a beehive makes the bee work for him and benefits by their work. A real sannyasi should not touch, even with his toes, the figure of a woman, even if it is a doll made of wood. If he does so, he will fall like the male elephant, which is lured into a pit by the sight of a female elephant. Even beautiful music and music which has been sung with a desire to please the senses should not be heard by a sannyasi. His mind will be, without his knowledge, bent towards the many temptations that come his way, and like a deer caught in a net, he will be caught in the meshes of delusion. No one is exempt from this rule. The great rishis, Vibhandaka, and a son by name Rishyashringa, whom he had brought up as innocent as the deer he lived with. And yet, even this young innocent man was lured away from the side of his father by music and dancing, which were meant to tempt him. The fish is tempted by the piece of meat placed as a bait, and it is easily caught. Man should beware of the sense of taste. To eat less is the first lesson one should learn. Even the wise man can conquer all his other senses, but this one sense, The one sense organ, the tongue, is not easy to control. It is a strange quality of this organ that even when it is starved, it feeds on thoughts of food. A Jitendriya, one who has conquered his senses, is in reality one whose taste buds have been destroyed by self-control. The time-honored examples of the tyranny of the senses are the bee, the elephant, the moth, and the fish. The sense of smell is responsible for the downfall of the bee, which rushes to the flower with which bears that scent. The touch of the female elephant is enough to drag the male animal into the pit. Sound kills the deer. The lion roars with its mouth on the ground, and the deer, not knowing where it comes from, rushes towards the lion and gets killed. The fish is tempted by the sense of taste. A piece of meat, which is the bait, really is the cause of its undoing. As for the moth, the sense of sight kills it. The sight of flame is enough to destroy it completely. When just the single sense and its potency is enough to destroy it completely, the one who has succumbed to it, what then can one say about the condition of man, beset as he is on all sides by the objects of the five senses, and himself possessing no strength to resist them? Unless he is alert always, waking or sleeping, man will fall into these pits and get lost. There was once a dancing girl by name Pingala in the country by name Videha. Her profession was such that she had to make her living out of men who paid for their pleasure. One night, she dressed herself up with great care, as it was very necessary in her profession, and as was her custom, with a desire to tempt some man into her house, she stood at the doorstep looking at the passers-by. She wanted money, and so she was set on finding a rich man who would look at her and come into her house to please himself and at the same time make her rich. For a long time she waited, but no one came. She would go into the house and come out again, and all the while she searched for someone who would look at her and come in. And so passed half the night. Pingala was very unhappy. Her face was drawn with disappointment and her eyes filled with tears of anger and frustration. Suddenly, she became disgusted with herself, and noble thoughts came to her mind. She said, "A person who has not realized the aloneness of Atman is fit for nothing. He will never be able to shed the love he has for his possessions like wife, wealth, children, home, and so on. He will not be able to give up the love he has for his own body. Look at myself. I have never been able to control the course of my mind in the wrong paths. In my desire to enjoy the pleasures of the body with a man, I have abandoned the Lord and have become foolish and obstinate. What a fool I am! Inside me is the Lord, who will ever be mine and who will grant me moksha. And having him inside me, I have been blind and deaf. I have all these days been going in search of mere mortal men to give me happiness. For the sake of this doubtful pleasure, which lasts for a moment, which is ever accompanied by pain, sadness, and misery, I have abandoned the Lord and submitted this body of mine to endless indignities. This body of mine, which is like a house built of bamboo sticks, tied loosely and covered with a thin skin, this body is made up of water and blood and bones. To gratify this body, I have lost sight of the Lord, who still has the mercy to live inside this disgusting shell called the body. I will not be foolish anymore. I will no longer think on the things of the world which do but decay soon. That I should have had my eyes opened now is indeed proof that the Lord has not forgotten me, though I had forgotten him till now. The troubles I have had are but the blessings sent me by him, or else I would never have come back to the right path so soon. And so, with the sudden realization of the foolishness of years, Pingala abandoned all desires and went to bed, deciding that she would think on the Lord and no one else. Even like her, one should give up thoughts on earthly things and set one's mind on the Lord. This is the way to gain peace. When a man becomes fond of some object in his possession, that very possession will cause him unhappiness. Once he abandons it, he gains happiness. This lesson I learned from a kurari. Kurari is a squirrel. This small being had a piece of meat with it. Birds which were larger and stronger than it surrounded the kurari and went on pecking it. It suffered the harassment for a while and held on to the piece of meat. But when it became unbearable, it gave up its hold on the piece of meat. At once, at that very moment, the birds which were torturing it so long left it in peace, and the kurari went on its way without a care. I have no possessions, and I am not affected by praise of others or by their censure. I have no wife and children to claim my affection. I am happy in the thought that I am free of the bondages which are earthly, and that is why I look so happy and tranquil. Remember, this is what Dattatreya is saying. We have Avaduta Gita 3. Today, it might be a little extended session. Just want to complete this today. So bear with the reading. Those of you who are not able to continue can access the recording later. I will tell you about the lesson I learned from a young girl. There was a young girl who was left alone in the house while her parents had gone out somewhere. They had been to some place nearby and they were to come back only the next day. When she was alone, unexpected guests arrived in her house and she had to entertain them. There was no rice ready in the house. The young girl went to the backyard and tried to pound some grains. She was trying to do this in secret, lest her guests should know it. But the bangles in her hand slid down to her wrist and threatened to expose her poverty by making music while she plied her pestle. Promptly, she broke some of them. She broke most of them, and with just 2 bangles on each hand, she continued her work. Even these 2 made some noise. She then broke 1 on each wrist. The single bangle did not make any noise, and she could do her work noiselessly. The lesson I learned from this young girl was priceless. Living with many people will only cause quarrels and dissatisfaction. Even 2 people are enough to cause conversation, which may lead to unpleasantness later. So, like the single bangle on the girl's wrist, one should be alone in this world. Concentration is essential if one desires to attain oneness with the Paramatman. If man desires to attain the Brahmi state, he must perceive the oneness with the other Atman, and for reaching the Samadhi, concentration is essential. The breath should first be brought under control, pranayama. This makes the mind to be brought under control. The mind will lose its vikshepa, its fickleness, by renouncing the objects of the senses. This comes only by practice. When it is awake, the mind is never steady, but moves from one object to object, from thought to thought, from one thing to another. It is ever restless. In the dream state, the mind is rarer, no doubt, but it is involved in a world of its own, peopled by its own creations. In the deep sleep state, the mind lies dormant. It is inactive, but only as long as it is in that state. This is the condition of man's mind. But a mind which is, by practice, brought under control to such an extent that it has, on its own accord, given up desires, the vasanas which accompany one from janma to janma because of the karma we have performed, is free. Then it can be free of the gunas also easily and become pure sattva, which is only one step less than becoming one with the dhyeya, the absolute. This lesson I gathered from an archer who, when taking aim, did not know what was happening around him. This archer did not know that a king passed him by. He was so intent on aiming at the target that nothing engaged his attention except the thought that his arrow should hit his target. A snake avoids the company of men since it is highly suspicious of their intentions. It is alone and has no dwelling place of its own. It never transgresses any rule and it lives alone with itself. Even so, should a sannyasi live alone without contact with another human being. He should not have a home of his own because that is only the beginning of other bondages. He should try to be as much away from the world of men as possible by living in caves, hermitages, and such like. The dehin, the dweller in the body, when it begins to think of some object intensely to the exclusion of everything else, becomes like the object thought of, like the worm which the wasp captures and keeps in its shell, becomes out of fear like the wasp itself in course of time. When the mind thinks on the Paramatman with intense concentration, it will, in course of time, become one with it. The spider taught me the final lesson. I was watching him. He was sitting quietly on a piece of twig on a tree. Suddenly, when there was a slight breeze, he spat out some thin filament out of itself, and swinging in the breeze, it reached another twig, and between the two twigs it traveled to and fro, and in a very short time built a web. A few days later, I saw the same spider eating up the threads and undoing the web, and soon there was nothing left of the very beautiful web it had woven. Even so, the Paramatman, he has no desires and he is beyond the reach of cause and effect. At the end of the kalpa, there is nothing. When the equilibrium of the gunas is upset by time, it is called maya. And the Paramatman manifests himself in the form of the Mahat Tattva and the Aham Tattva and the entire universe made up of the elements. And at the end of the kalpa, he withdraws into himself the universe. The Avaduta continued, O king, these are the lessons which I learned from the 24 gurus I mentioned, and have been practicing what I have learned. This body of mine has its own lesson to teach, has also been studied by me. It is the base, the foundation on which one's very life exists. And yet, when the Atman leaves the body, it becomes fit only to be the food of animals or worms, or it becomes a handful of ashes. I therefore gave up all attachment to the body. For the sake of pleasing the body, man spends endless time and energy. He finds a wife, son, wealth, cows, servants, house, and friends. All these are assembled with great difficulty, and man takes very good care of them. And what does this body do? This wooden case created by karmas of his previous birth binds him to another body in his next birth, and without any consideration for the man who built it, decays and dies. Consider the man who is fond of his body. To pacify the tongue, he is drawn in one direction and in search of water, since the throat is parched. The sex urge pulls him one way, and stomach bothers him in another manner. The ears want good music, pleasant for them to listen to, and the nose wants him to provide sweet scents. The eyes want beautiful things to look at, and he has to satisfy all these cravings. Like a man with many wives, man is made to satisfy many desires at the same time. When he was created, man was given the power of discrimination, and he is given a good intellect. These should help him to set his thoughts on the Brahman. After so many births, far inferior to the human status, after passing through the worm state, and then reptile state, and then animal state, man is granted the privilege of having a human form and a human mind and a human intellect. Why? So that he can use them properly. This body should be kept alive very carefully for but one purpose, to attain salvation, because that is the only reason why we are given this form. I have realized it. I have learned absolute vairagya, non-attachment. My mind is illuminated by the wisdom I have garnered from my wanderings on the earth and from the gurus I told you about. There is no feelings of I in my mind, and I have never suffered from the other disease, mine. I am wandering on the face of the earth without any desire and without any attachments, and that is the reason why there is tranquility on my face. Yadu saluted him with great reverence, and bidding him adieu, the Avaduta went away from there. Krishna said, Uddhava, live in the world of men without being attached to anyone or anything. Set your thoughts on me. Act in the world without any desire to please yourself. It is when desire taints actions that they become productive and karma is born. Karma which causes bondage and another birth after this. Your daily duty should be performed, and if they are done without any purpose behind them, they will not bind you to the world of action. Fill your mind with noble thoughts. The requisites of the Ashtanga Yoga should all fill your mind. Ahimsa, not hurting anyone. Satya, truthfulness. Asteya, non-stealing. Asanga, non-attachment. Lajja, shamefulness at performing wrong things. Asanshaya, not collecting wealth and such like. Brahmacharya, having the senses under control. Mauna, silence. Sthairya, steadfastness. Kshama, forgiving. Abhaya, fearlessness. These are the qualities you should cultivate in your mind and none else. Spend your thoughts on the nature of the Atman. Remember the example of the fire inside the wood? It is contained in the wood. When it is churned, it comes out and it destroys the container. Even so, the Atman inside you, when it is seen as separate from the body which contains it, will help you lose yourself and become one with it. You have heard me often enough expounding about the different pathways of approach to me. Of all the pathways, the easiest is the Bhakti Yoga. It is easy and it leads you to me quickly. You will become a Jivan Mukta very soon if you practice Bhakti Yoga. Here Krishna smiled and said, it is nothing new for you since you have been practicing it all these years. I know the infinite amount of love you have for me. I am asking you to stay back in the world of men to teach them the Atma Vidya I have taught you. Uddhava wanted to know how long he had to live on in the world of men. I do not see how it is going to be possible, Krishna, he sobbed. And Krishna spent some more time telling him about the art of detachment, about how a Baddha, one who is bound, can become a Mukta, one who has found release by constant meditation and thinking on the Lord. It was time for them to part. Uddhava folded both his hands and falling at the feet of Krishna, he shed tears profusely. Then, in a voice full of emotion, he said, Krishna, the delusion which had been covering me like a cloak of darkness has been lifted by you and have been taught the right path by you, the way out of this world of Maya. The lamp of knowledge has been kindled and given to me by you. Because of this, the bonds I had till now for my people, my kinsmen, and others have been snapped, and I feel free. Please grant me only this, that I should have this clarity till the end of my life. Krishna said, Uddhava, go now to Badarikashrama, where I once performed tapas. Stay there, singing the Ganga every day and bathing in her pure water. She is pure since she flows from my feet. Live in the forest, eat as little as you can, and go about like an avadhuta without any attachment to anything. You will reach me very soon. Uddhava prostrated once again before Krishna and took leave of him. The parting from Krishna was very hard for him, and even for Krishna it was a sad moment. Without looking back, Uddhava turned his steps towards the ashrama named Badarika, where Nara and Narayana had once performed tapas. The end of the Yadu house. Krishna had asked the Yadavas to assemble in the great hall by name Sudharma. When they were all there, Krishna stood up and said, the evil omens, as I told you, seem to be numerous. It bodes no good to our clan. I do not think it is safe for us to stay here in Dwaraka even for a moment more. We will make a pilgrimage. Nearby is the Tirtha Sangotra. Let the women and children go to this Tirtha. We will bathe in the waters there, purify ourselves from there, we the men folk will go further and reach Prabhasa Tirtha. We will bathe in the waters and purifying ourselves, and let us observe fasts and other vratas. We will offer up sacrifices to the gods and live lavishly and give lavishly to Brahmins and the poor. This way, we can avert the calamity which seems to threaten us. As per his wish, the women, children, and the old men went to Sangotra and the others went to Prabhasa. They performed all the many yagas which they had planned to in Prabhasa. They were now sure that they had pacified the gods and that the evil which was prophesied by the skies and on the earth would be falsified. As for the curse of the rishis, why, that was so long ago that it was forgotten by all of them. And those who remembered thought of it as a mere joke, since the iron pestle had been destroyed. They were safe. One night, they were all relaxing after the strenuous vratas they had been observing all these days. All of them partook of the wine by name Maireyaka. It was an extremely tasty drink and they drank too much. Not one of them had any control over his senses or his tongue. They began to talk drunkenly. Words added to words became arguments, and the arguments grew into quarrels. Within a matter of moments, a great fight rose out of small arguments, and each of the heroes reached for his bow and arrows, or his gada or his sword. It was indeed a dreadful scene. They were camping on the shores of the sea, and soon they came out of their tents to fight in the open on the seashore. The fight was terrible, unbelievable, and dreadful. Krishna stood silent all the while. He stood apart and he saw the Yadavas killing each other. He stood unmoved. He stood watching, and there was impatience in his eyes. Just when the fight began, Balarama knew what was going to happen. In sheer disgust at the sight of the drunken brawl, he retired to a great distance. He met Krishna's eyes and walked away. Krishna knew that Balarama would abandon his body with the help of his yoga. Krishna turned his eyes on the fighting heroes. Soon their weapons were broken and they looked around for something to use. It was the seashore, so they found no tree which they could uproot. On the edge of the seashore, they saw a dense growth of grass. There was quite a lot of this grass, and they pulled out handfuls of the grass and hit each other with it. Contrary to their expectations, the weapon proved to be very effective. Each blade of grass was as powerful as Indra's Vajra. They were too drunk to consider how this could be possible. Krishna knew that each blade of grass had grown out of the powdered iron pestle which had been thrown into the sea. Krishna stood watching as they killed each other. He saw them all die. Satyaki, Kritavarma, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Gada, Samba, Sharana. He stood unmoved, unperturbed. Perhaps there was some emotion inside his mighty heart, but no one knew. In a matter of moments, the seashore was strewn with the bodies of the Yadavas. They were all dead, every one of them. Krishna stood over them and looked for a long moment. Was this not what he had planned? Was this not the scene which he had to witness before returning to his abode? He shook himself as if out of a reverie. Krishna walked fast. He wanted to go as far away from there as possible. The final hour. Only the waves of the sea and the blue sky and an occasional bird which would wheel across the sky saw the glorious form of Krishna during his last hour on this earth. He shone like fire which burns without smoke, hiding its flames. His form, dark like a rain-bearing cloud, was dressed as usual with the 2 pieces of his favorite yellow silk. The mole, Srivatsa, was there to beautify his broad chest, where rested the jewel, Kaustubha. His face bore a smile, and the smile was made up of so many emotions. Relief at the thought that at last he was free. Pity for the world of men which would again drift into unrighteous ways the moment he left the earth. A sigh half sad and half affectionate for the dead men who had all been his kinsmen till a few moments ago. The impatient look which was on his face was gone now. His mind dwelt for a while on Uddhava, and again the smile came on his face and vanished. Krishna came to an Ashwatha tree, and under the shade of the tree he sat down. He assumed the Padmasana and sat in meditation. He had still one more problem which he had to solve. He had assumed the form of a human being, and it was essential that he should die like a human being. How could that be possible? He smiled to himself. He was the last of the Yadavas, and he knew what was going to happen to him. Krishna sat there with the Vanamala flying in the breeze. His right hand showed the Chin Mudra, and his left hand was resting on his lap. His legs were crossed, and his left foot was resting on his right thigh. And so he sat for a long hour, deep in meditation. A hunter by name Jara was passing that way. For a second, he paused and looked. From a distance, he saw Krishna. He saw the yellow silk covering the limbs, and on the silk could be seen the left foot. The sole was red and tender like a lotus petal, and from that distance, the total impression the hunter got was that of a deer was standing there. He hurried with his bow and arrow. The deer was standing still, and he had to use that to advantage. He fixed his arrow to his bow with dexterity, and he shot at the deer. The hunter heard a human voice cry out in pain. He hurried to the spot and found Krishna lying on the ground. He was holding his left foot, which had been hurt, in his two hands, and there was pain writ on his face. His brows were wet with sweat, and the hunter was filled with horror at what he had done. He fell at Krishna's feet and said, "What I am to do, my lord? Unwittingly I have committed a crime which cannot be pardoned. Please tell me what I should do." Krishna said, "I am not angry with you. On the contrary, I am happy that you've done me a great favor, a great service. But now, please leave me. Please let me be alone. I assure you that you will go to heaven straight for the service that you have rendered me. Do not worry, but go in peace." The hunter could not follow what the Lord had said. He only knew that he had been forgiven. With a heavy heart, he walked away from there. He had killed a noble man. That was all he knew. Daruka, the charioteer of Krishna, was searching for his master for a long time. He knew that Krishna had left the spot where the terrible fighting had raged just a while back. He tried to find the path which Krishna had taken. He followed the footsteps, and later, the scent of the tulasi, which was ever on the neck of Krishna, led Daruka to where Krishna was. Daruka saw Krishna with the arrow buried deep in his foot. Krishna had fallen on the ground, and it was evident that he was in great pain. Daruka rushed to him, fell at his feet, and said, "What has happened, my lord? Who did this to my master?" Krishna said, "Daruka, there is no time to discuss all that. You must go now at once to Dwaraka. I am setting you a very hard task. You must tell my parents about the death of the entire Yadava clan and about the decision of Balarama to abandon his human form with the help of his yoga. After that, see to it that no one stays in Dwaraka, because the sea will enter the city after I am gone. Tell Arjuna that he should take the women and children and also the old and weak beings to Indraprastha. As for you, set your mind on me constantly, and soon you will reach me." Krishna paused for a moment. He winced with pain, and he said, "Daruka, there is one task more which you have to do. Please do it for my sake. Just pull out this arrow which is hurting me." Daruka was sobbing openly, and with trembling hands, he pulled out the arrow. The Lord cried out in pain, and then he took the arrow in his hand. Daruka went around him 3 times, and he prostrated before Krishna. "You must hurry, Daruka. Life is fast ebbing out of me," said Krishna, and Daruka left him like that. When he looked back, he saw Krishna sitting on the ground with the arrow in his hand and a smile of infinite peace on his face. Krishna looked at the arrow for a long time. He remembered the incident of the curse of the rishis. The iron pestle had been powdered and thrown into the waters. He remembered the servants telling Balarama that one piece of iron could not be broken up. It is no matter, said Balarama. Throw that also into the sea. Krishna knew that the piece had been swallowed by a fish. It was in course of time caught, and while it was being cleaned, the iron piece which was found inside it was taken by the hunter, who fixed it on his arrow, since it was perfect for that purpose. It was this same arrow which had been used. Krishna did not want the words of the rishis to be falsified, and he was happy. He had ever held Brahmins in great reverence, and even at the last moment of his life, he made it possible for the words of Brahmins to come true. Brahma, accompanied by the celestial host, came to the spot where Krishna was. They were all there to take him back with them. Indra and his comrades, the Prajapatis, the Pitras, Siddhas, Gandharvas, and the lesser gods, the rishis led by Maitreya. There was not space enough in the sky to accommodate the divine chariots. Flowers rained incessantly from the heavens. Krishna looked at all of them, and then he closed his lotus eyes. He went into a yogic trance, and in his own form, he reached his abode, Vaikuntha. The heavenly host could not see when the Lord went back to his abode. When the lightning leaves the cloud and enters the sky, human beings are not able to follow its course. And even so, the disappearance of Krishna could not be seen even by the celestials. They returned to their places, happy at the thought that the Lord had come back to Vaikuntha after he had performed those many glorious deeds for the sake of keeping his promise to Mother Earth. But when Krishna left, Satya, truth, Dharma, righteousness, Kirti, fame, Shri, beauty and wealth, and all that is auspicious followed him, and the earth was left empty of all the glory that was hers till now. Daruka reached Dwaraka. He went to the presence of the old people, Ugrasena, Vasudeva, and Devaki. He told them about the annihilation of the Yadava clan and about the end of the great Balarama and Krishna. Vasudeva and Devaki heard the news and fell down senseless. They did not get up. In the midst of the heartbroken cries and lamentations of the women who had lost their men and the citizens who had lost everything which they thought was worthwhile, who had nothing to live for, now that the brothers were dead, Daruka rushed to Arjuna. Painful tasks were lying on the shoulders of Arjuna. Many of the princesses ascended the funeral pyres. Arjuna saw to it that the proper rites were observed when the tarpanas were offered for the dead. He collected all the citizens and the remaining few young women and children and led them towards Indraprastha. With a sudden roar, the sea rushed towards the city by name Dwaraka. It was entirely covered with water. Nothing could be seen except the turret of the mansion where Krishna lived. Very soon, Arjuna reached Indraprastha. Hearing about the tragedy of Prabhasa, Yudhishthira and the Pandavas with their queen Draupadi left their kingdom and proceeded towards the Himalayas, towards the north. We will stop here. The rest of it, I think, we can read by ourselves. We will end by chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 11 times. There is actually a section on the Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti, as is ingrained in every part of the Bhagavatam, is one of the easiest paths according to Krishna to salvation, right? So with all that devotion in our heart, let's chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 11 times, and we'll end this session here.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Jai Gurudev. We'll do a little Aarti, Prasadam, Naivedyam and Aarti. I would request if any one of you is able to sing a Krishna bhajan meanwhile, while I get that ready, we'll have a Krishna bhajan and then we'll do the Aarti. You can unmute and sing.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let us all sing together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
We can have another song. Thank you, Dr. Renu. Bela, if you are able to sing, please sing, or Madhuri ji, any one of you.
My throat is choking, so I can't sing. Ever grateful. Thank you.
Can anyone sing Bhaj Govindam, one or two paragraphs, Bhaj Govindam?
राधे राधे मन बोले, मन में अमृत रस घोले। ओ राधे राधे मन बोले, मन में अमृत रस घोले। बंसी का हर राग है तू ही, जीवन का अनुराग है तू ही। बंसी का हर राग है तू ही, जीवन का अनुराग है तू ही। तेरे नैनों की बेला में लेकर मेरा मोर मुकुट, संग पवन के डोले, मन में अमृत रस घोले। हो राधे राधे मन बोले, मन में अमृत रस घोले। जीवन में फिर क्या बाधा है, संग जो मेरे तू राधा है। जीवन में फिर क्या बाधा है, संग जो मेरे तू राधा है। निर्धन का तू धन है राधा, निर्धन का तो धन है राधा। प्रेम के सन मूल रतन को कौन तुला में तोले। मन में अमृत रस घोले। हो राधे राधे मन बोले, मन में अमृत रस घोले। हो राधे राधे मन बोले, मन में अमृत रस घोले।
I would like to sing a bhajan song. Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Narayana Vasudeva, Nath Narayana Vasudeva, Nath Narayana Vasudeva, Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare, Nath Narayana Vasudeva, Radhe 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 Shyam, 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 Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava, He Nanda Mukunda Muralindra Radhe Govinda, Giridhari Giridhari Radha Madhava. Jai Gurudev.
Devotion in us, we offer all that we have received so far unto his lotus feet, and praying that he keeps us on this path of bhakti, jnana, so that we ultimately fulfill the purpose of our human birth. With that intention, let's do our thing for him. Shankaraya 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 Mangalam, Shankari Manohara Shataya Mangalam, Raja Rama Mangalam, Krishna Mangalam, Sita Rama Mangalam, Radhe Rama Mangalam, Guru Deva Mangalam, Sadguru Deva Mangalam, Sadanaya Mangalam, Sadanaya Mangalam, Ananda Mangalam, Paramananda Mangalam,
सदानन्दमङ्गलं सदानन्दमङ्गलं शङ्कराय 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 मङ्गलं शङ्करी मनोहराय शाश्वताय मङ्गलम्. All of you can take the arti.
जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय
राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. हरि हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. हरि बोल हरि बोल 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 हरि बोल. जय जय राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय जय राधा हो राधा हो राधा रमण हरि बोल. जय गुरुदेव.
लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु. लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु. लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु. ओम शांति शांति शांति. जय गुरुदेव.
Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
धन्यवाद ब्रह्मराजी. धन्यवाद for the bliss.
Tomorrow we will have a Manana session on the whole of Bhagavatam, and then we'll go on to the 11th chapter. So tomorrow let's just recap all that we have learned, our takeaways of Bhagavatam, and then we'll continue. Jai Gurudev.
Very nice. Thank you, Brahmaraj.